Welcome to the Recovery Stories podcast, bringing you stories of hope, healing, and triumph over the bondage of addictions, mental health struggles, trauma, and dysfunctional family systems. Our courageous storytellers have chosen to live their journey out loud in order to show others that they don't have to suffer in silence. The stories you will hear are raw, real, and may involve graphic and triggering content. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health's Rooted alumni community. If you or a loved one are struggling, have questions, or are ready to take the next step, call our admission center at 888-648-4098. Or visit us online at www.promisesbehavioralhealth.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.
Welcome to Rooted Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer, and I'm your host. I am so glad for this day to come. This is our first episode of Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have one of my favorite people to talk to back with us today for the second time on this show, Bravo TV's Real Housewives of Orange County, as a past guest on this show or a multitude of other wonderful avenues. She uses her platform to bring about positive change in our world. Won't you help me welcome Braunwyn Windham Burke?
Hi, I'm so glad to be back here.
It's definitely a treat. I'm so glad you said yes. And, it's our goal for this year. We set out for Mental Health Awareness Month at Promises and here on this podcast to simply break stigma and increase access to hope and help through having meaningful conversations, both on this podcast, and encourage people to have them just like you and I are having today in their communities. And so hopefully we can inspire some of that.
I hope so. It's funny when you talk about recovery and being an alcoholic, people are always so open and warm and, they're so excited for you to be in recovery. But I've noticed that mental health doesn't get the same grace. When you talk about in my own family, bipolar or depression or anxiety, people are like, shh, don't talk about that. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful that you are, raising awareness for Mental Health Awareness Month, because so often is addiction and mental health, concurrent diseases. They often run side by side. So thank you for, shining a light on this.
Absolutely. And we touched a little bit, because I think that it's always, whenever I have somebody on, we talk about the addiction process and recovery, I always touch on, asking questions related to mental health. But the main focus, like as was on your previous episode, we talked mainly about the addiction recovery side, because it's almost really deserves two separate conversations, because there is this duality in our society, right? Where it's easier to focus for those of us, because I'm in the same boat, right? Like I have clearly diagnosed, I've got mental health issues that I see a therapist for and what have you. And it's easier to, from the outside, for either when we're talking about the media, community, our family members, to look at the problematic behaviors from addiction and say, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yes.
And, but then we get sober.
That's fixable. If you're an alcoholic, stop drinking, then you're cured. Yeah. And I think we're in a society that likes to put an easy fix. So, we work a program. Why did you drink? That's the actual question. And that's a lot harder. And that's an ongoing process that you're never fixed of. So.
Very true. Very true. And I feel like it's like this for everybody, but it's like, and it's never even like, if we look at the spikes or, the level of acuity that we experience, it's never like this, right? Like, it's like, it often goes up and down all around, all the things. Oh my gosh. Before we get too far into that, I have to ask you though, because the last time you and I talked, you were so excited because you were getting a new dog that day. And
that's right. I was in Brad's garage. I did this from Brad's garage. I did. We picked up our dog that day. That was Mara. And we brought her home. That was like 6, 7, 8 months ago, 9 months ago.
Yeah. So is everything going good with her?
She's the easiest dog. I was very lucky to find Brad Bevel. He is a dog trainer. I found him through Cameron Westcott from Dallas Housewives. And he came and he sat with our home and he met our family. And so he found the dog for us. And she's really the coolest, chillest dog. She fit Yeah, I love her.
I love that. I love it. I love it.
Someone
I
needs
love
to
it.
be chill in my household. So it's the dog.
Isn't that the truth? Oh gosh, I feel like that animals can be in so many avenues, just like that. They're that solid rock for us, right? When everything else is so chaotic. So, well, I'm glad that's going well. I love our fur family, and yeah, it's always great when we're able, to have them. So. I wanted to also just touch on, I know that you were walking through an ever evolving family dynamic, with your kids. And one of the things that I just have so much respect for you for is that you feel very transparent and genuine with what you share about that process, on your platform. And the good, bad, and the ugly, all of it. And so I just wondered if there's anything you'd like to share about where you are with all of that, and how, your current, um, you know, status is with, your significant other currently, and,
Which significant other are you referring to?
Oh, okay. So
Sean and we are doing something called nesting. So this house that I'm in right now, this room, I'm in here for 1 week and then Sean's here for a week. It's not set in stone. It's not through the courts. We're still legally married. This is just something that we're doing on our own so the kids can have as much structure and continuity. It was really important for us when we went into this next phase of our life that the kids would have as much love and stability as possible. So Sean and I come in and out of the house. I have a place in New York where I live with my girlfriend. And then, so the kids have their rooms in their home, and that doesn't change. And then, occasionally we'll do a night or two together, like on either side, so the kids can see us as a family. We spent Mother's Day together. But for the most part, Sean and I are just, we're co-parenting. We are doing the best we can. We are trying to figure it all out, kind of making up our own rules as they go along. But the one thing that we are both singularly focused on is what is best for our kids. We have 5 kids that still live at home, and we have 2 girls that are out of the house, but we have to be very cognizant of their comfort level and how they're doing. So, it's a work in progress. Some days are great. Let's do this again.
Yeah, right.
I think this is the best, curveball for pretty much everything in our life. So we have, some days are great, some days aren't. But we're getting through it. I think we're getting through it as well as anyone can hope. Is it perfect? No, but like everything else, progress, not perfection. And we're trying to be very mindful of the kids and their boundaries. My oldest daughter doesn't want to meet the girl I'm dating, so I respect that. My second daughter and her have their own texts and their best friends. So we're just taking every child for who they are. And, we obviously have a very, queer friendly family. And so it's not that I'm dating a woman. It's just that I'm dating someone that's not daddy, that it's been hard. But, to take it back to the mental health, I will say, Rowan, my second daughter, she was very open about her struggles with anorexia and eating issues, which also stem from, she has borderline personality disorder. And she was originally diagnosed with bipolar disorder and mismedicated. And so when you talk about like getting help and reaching out during mental health awareness, I think it's so important, because when I was looking for help for her, when she was spiraling, and as a mom, I didn't know what to do, and she was over 18, so there wasn't much I could do. I didn't know who to look for help. If you were to come to me in the addiction recovery, I have so many numbers of people I can reach out to. My phone is a Rolodex of help. But when I was trying to find help in the mental health field, the mental health arena, I didn't have those numbers or those resources. And I'm very grateful that I've had such an open and honest communication level with my children, because Rowan, she knows not to self-medicate with alcohol. She knows the dangers of it. So I think a lot of people in her position probably would have turned to drinking or drugs to sort of calm herself down, but she knew that wasn't the right thing to do. And eventually she did ask for help, and we got her the help she needed. But I'm grateful that I have been so open with my kids about mental health and addiction, because they know they can come to me. And like, I didn't have the answers, but I found them real fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that both as you've been explaining how, your unique family, set up, and also the approach to, gosh, just parenting and parenting through challenging behavioral health issues. And no matter what, at the end of the day, like that message of mom and dad, or your parents in general, being willing to they know that you're doing whatever it takes to make them
it's hard too. And there's been times with, my ex-husband where he's doing things and I'm like, have to remind him, I'm a recovering alcoholic. What are you doing? Like I have to remind him too, because I think sometimes people forget, because I'm fine. She's fine. It's been 2 years. She's fine. And I even have to remind people sometimes, I'm not fine. I'm only one drink away from losing everything, Yeah. So sometimes when Sean and I are having a tough time and like we're not being the best versions of ourselves, that's like a nice way of saying we're being petty assholes.
Yeah.
But like I will have to say, please remember, I'm in recovery right now. Like give me the grace to not set me up to fail, because I have to deal with all of this, but I have to deal with it all sober. And even now, I would say 90% of the time I'm fine, but 10% of the time there is that thing of, oh my God, I just want to drink, like that. And I maybe one day I'll get to a point where that never pops in my head, but I'm not there yet. I still have that 10% of the time where I'd be like, oh my God, I just want to drink. Now, have I acted on it? Of course not. I make a phone call, like my sponsor, I go to a meeting, but it's still there. And I do have to remind people in my life sometimes, like, I'm a recovering alcoholic. That isn't anything that's cured. So, tread lightly, proceed accordingly, but keep that in the back of your head, and then with my new significant other, Victoria, my girlfriend, we've been together about 7 months. She never knew me drinking. She met me sober. She's only seen me sober. And I think it's easy for her to forget sometimes that I used to be a blackout drunk. Like, I don't even think she can imagine that now, because she only knows me like this. So, we were out the other night and people were partying, not just drinking, but partying. Yeah. And I hadn't been around that in a long time. This was the first time where I had been in that. I've gotten used to people drinking, but not drinking. And I went back home that night. I had the worst anxiety, and she didn't understand what was going on. I was like, this is bringing back like really, like, I'm not okay. Like I'm not triggered, but I'm something right now, And she was scared. She didn't know what to do. She's like, are you going to drink again? What do you need? I'm like, no, I'm going to go to a meeting. I'm going to go, to a Zoom meeting. Like there's one all hours of the day. And so explaining to her that me saying I need to go to a meeting is not the same thing as me saying I'm going to have a drink. Yeah. And kind of just taking the time to understand that, that's like taking your medicine. So there's a lot of dynamics at play. But I think for me, I've always been so open about the fact that I'm an alcoholic. I have no problem reminding people, hi, I'm in recovery.
Yes. I love that you are bringing this up, because this is, I think, our 90th episode, and all of my conversations I've had with people, I've never had somebody talk about that very important piece, because no matter who you are, when you get sober, there are people in your life that you have to educate and re-educate on the new you. And what your needs are, and the fact that we have to advocate for them. Like it's never a permanent, like you said, a permanent fix or permanent solution. Same thing with the mental health side of things. And I just want to touch on real quick something really cool that I've again just getting to watch you do over this past year was go to and participate in more things. You went to Coachella for the first time sober. You've been doing all these other things as well, and just celebrating them and saying, look, you practice a program, you do what you're supposed to do. Like life is possible, and it's possible to stay sober. It's possible to find joy and happiness and all these things. It's so very encouraging. And
Really is, because I think we've talked about this last time. When you get sober, you're like, well, that's it. Life is over. I'm going to be bored. What's the point? Like, it's DoorDash and Netflix for the rest of my life. And although that was my reality for a good year, as it needed to be, I needed to stay home. That's not my reality now. I went to Coachella. I danced the night away. I stayed up all night. And you know what was amazing? I had more fun sober than I have had at any music festival drinking, because I wasn't waiting in line for a drink. I wasn't having to pee the whole time. I wasn't sick and passed out. I was actually just in the moment having the best time. So I had way more fun at Coachella. Anyone listening, I had way more fun at Coachella sober than I've had any time on any substance. You know, my vacations are better. I'm not trying to like day drink and then rally for night. I'm just present. I'm just doing adventures. You know, I'm reading books and remembering them. You know, because I travel a lot. I'm having the best time. I'm going to so many events. I went to the GLAAD Awards, you know, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the speeches, not out in the bar talking to people, you know, and that really is everything. And if you look at me, I'm out all the time. I'm out at the bars. I'm out at the clubs. I just did for Mother's Day, I went to a drag show thing with my kids, and it was so fun. And I love doing all of that sober. Like, I actually love it. That being said, when I'm ready to leave, I am ready to leave. I never let anyone guilt me into staying. So if it's 1:00 and I call it the fun limit. And right here is when I leave, right before everyone starts to this. So I know when the fun limit is now, and I say bye. And if you don't respect that, odds are we're not going to be friends for long. You know, everyone knows when I say goodbye, I mean it. Now, sometimes I leave before my girlfriend, and that's okay. Like, she knows she doesn't have to come home with me. This isn't just because we go together doesn't mean we always have to leave together. She's having a great time, fine, because she drinks. Yeah. And that's something that I just want to put out there, because a lot of people ask me that a lot. Is Victoria sober? No, but she's normal. Right. Like, for lack of a better word, we'll go to brunch and she'll have one mimosa. And I still find that to be the most fascinating thing, when someone can have a drink. Yeah. Weird. Like, one. And then she'll just not have another one. I'm like, I don't even know how that works.
What's the point? It also is kind of excruciating, like thinking about having one and not having any more. It's like, oh, that doesn't sound fun at all. But
no, it sounds painful, because once I have one, I get for me at least, it's a physical craving. Once I have one, something goes in my brain. But for us, like, we don't have alcohol in the house. That's a not negotiable for me. I can never live with someone if they had alcohol in the house. No. You have to respect that, because at least if I'm out, I can get away. But you know, she doesn't get sloppy. She'll have a drink or two when we're out. She'll have fun. But you know, if I'm having a bad day, like, hey, you know, I'm having some triggers, I'm having some stuff, she won't drink. Like, she's respectful. So, you know, to each their own. I know everyone's comfort level is different. So for me, that's okay, as long as you're respectful. Because I don't know if I mentioned last time, I have dated people that weren't. And it didn't last.
That weren't respectful of your.
No, I have been on a vacation with someone where they're trying to convince me that mushrooms were a great idea and I should do them. And I was sober, and I was like, I gotta go. Yeah. Like, I have to leave this situation. You know, I can't be here, because if I stay here, maybe you're going to start making sense, and I can't put myself in that position. I'm leaving. And although we got in a big fight and we ended up breaking up, I know that was the right choice. Yeah. You know. Sober comes first.
Absolutely. Well, it's so oh my gosh, I think it's easier to everyone could use boundaries, but like, when we get in any form of recovery, all of a sudden it's imperative that we learn what boundaries are and how to enforce them, because if we don't enforce our outline and enforce our own boundaries, no one's going to do that for us. Even the people we love don't know how to, you know, we're the only people that can define and enforce, you know, the boundaries that we need in order to keep us safe and, you know, have healthy, productive relationships.
And I think a lot of people in recovery come from a background of people pleasing.
Yeah.
You know, so that sort of tends to be a character trait that I've come across in a lot of recovering alcoholics. We're people pleasers, and you have to let that go. You have to. You know, you have to let that go if you're going to stay sober. You got to put yourself first. And if people get mad, you can't take that on. You know, you have to put your recovery first.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. I wanted to talk about the, that I had that like little box of things that I wanted to touch on first before we like dive deep in the mental health side. But I first wanted to kind of go back into the first bullet point we were talking about of kind of the polarization of you've got recovery and then mental health is over here. Like deal with your recovery first. And then when it comes to mental health, like once you've gotten recovered from addiction, go to therapy and whatever, but that's private, deal with that on your own or whatever, all that. I mean, I feel like maybe I'm alone with this, but I feel like that is a general, what I see time and time again in the lives of people that we're, bringing into the fold of recovery. It's really difficult for people to be in someone's life who is struggling with mental health and they don't know how to support that person. So it's easier, like you said earlier in that, it's easier for them to say, okay, you're better. I mean, like, are you better? You're better, right? Like hands off.
Right. You're good now. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, some of the ways that I think that I'm seeing a shift and a change are our language that we're using, like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable when we ourselves that struggle, taking crazy out of our vocabulary, right? Like using language that is kind to ourselves and to others that struggle.
Yes.
Because the world is already polarizing enough, black and white, good, bad, crazy or not crazy. So I was laying the foundation there to ask you what your experience has been like, because I knew that you had shared with me before, you've got this family history before you even had kids. You've got a family history, as many of us do, of a long line of mental health issues, and leading up into your own when they started to pop up. Like, so what has been your trajectory of learning about mental health, developing your own opinion about that part of behavioral, just struggles, and how do you approach that?
I mean, I think when I was first getting sober, I was so focused on not drinking that I really didn't put much emphasis on why I was drinking. And that's okay. I think for the first year, just don't drink. Like, that's it. Just don't drink. And I think the second year of my sobriety, I really started to think, why do I drink? I drink personally for anxiety. I have horrible social anxiety. I have very low self-esteem. I definitely feel like I'm not good enough. It doesn't matter. And it's probably one of the reasons why I went on a reality show, for that external validation. Okay, maybe then I'll be enough. That God-sized hole that we talk about was huge in me. So first year of sobriety, don't drink. And I was spiraling. I was spiraling because I didn't know how to fill the void that alcohol had previously filled. But for me, it was taking a time out. I took a time out from life. I went away for a little while. I went to Kauai with my kids, and I really started focusing on, why does Braunwyn do the things she does? And most of it, in my case, is a direct line to things in my childhood. Like, you do this because of this, you do this because of this, you do this because of this. Oh, okay. And then I'm very reactionary. And, working with my therapist, it's like, you react like this because of X, Y, Z. You react, oh, okay. So slowly, and I'm going to say, I'm very slow when it comes to these ingrained behaviors that I have, that for a lot of reasons kept me safe. Now let's keep in mind, my childhood was kind of traumatic. So I think a lot of these were formed for a reason. I needed them to protect me for a long time as a kid, but I don't really need them anymore. I can take care of myself now, and sort of learning to love myself, learning to trust that the universe was going to kind of take care of me. And then learning that it's okay not to be okay.
Mm.
You know, when I was let go of Housewife, they're like, oh, because Braunwyn wasn't in a good place. And I'll never forget that feeling of, you know, you told me to give you everything. And then when I did, it was like, well, you're too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know, I opened up my entire life for you and let you in. And you're like, sorry, you're a liability. And it's like, you know what? That is so not okay. Because if someone's willing to be vulnerable and honest and say, I need help, and then to knock them down, don't do that. So when Rowan was little, she had a phrase. She was like 8. And I don't like the word crazy, but she was 8. So we'll forgive her. She says, everyone has everyone has their crazy. And it's probably one of the most profound things that I've ever heard, because it kind of made me realize everyone has something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're all dealing with something, whether it's, you know, OCD, anxiety, self-esteem, depression. We all have something we're dealing with, and we're all masking it to the best of our abilities, whether it's a handbag, a drink, a nice house, or throwing a party, or Instagram. Let's just be honest, the biggest masker of all, social media.
Ooh.
Right. So, you know,
you just hurt some feelings right there.
You know, like
not mine.
We're all hiding stuff. And I think it's so important for all of us to just stop.
Yeah.
Like, stop pretending that we're okay. We just survived a global pandemic. No one is fine. Our kids, our teenagers, like the suicide rates are off the charts. You know, addiction rates are off the charts. So let's just let it go. We're not okay. Moms have been stretched, even though I know it's both parents, but all the studies show that it's mainly moms or the caregivers have been stretched to their limit. Like, no one's okay. Like, if you're drinking too much and they stop drinking, okay, well then now how can I support you? Because I don't know about you, but like, let's do this. Let's do the ride again. Because I still do that now. I still spiral. I feel like I can come back from it faster because I have the tools, but like, it's okay. And one thing I've always said, and this annoys the crud out of me, is stop using mental health diagnoses as insults. If someone's clean, they're not OCD. If someone is, you know, up and down, they're not bipolar. If someone is self-centered, they're not a narcissist. Like, unless you went to school for this, please don't diagnose people as insults. That's like, because bipolar, you can be an amazing human, you know, you can you can have a really clean house and you're not suffering from OCD, because OCD can be debilitating, you know, like narcissism is an actual disorder that is, you know, can affect everyone around them. That doesn't mean that you're self-centered. Like, these aren't the same. So please stop using those. Please. Let's step one.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because you know, I'm a fan of transparency and honesty. I mean, like, I've been guilty of doing that very thing, whether talking about myself, you know, and oh, I'm so OCD, but I'm not OCD. You know what I mean? Like, I just, there are certain things that I have been obsessive about, you know, just all of the things you just mentioned. It's easy to throw that around, whether you're describing your own behavior in jest or kidding with one of your friends. And the thing is, you never know if you joke about it, you never know who's hearing you, even if you think it's a safe space where it's understood that you're just kidding. We're always shaping a narrative, even if it's in our own mind, that is creating either kindness or hostility. Right. And if we're going around and throwing mental health diagnoses as insults, we're just nurturing that critical parent that's going to eat away at our internal mental health.
Well, it's so similar in some ways. Like, I remember growing up when I was little, people would use the term gay as an insult. Oh my God, that's so gay. Well, I was young, but I knew I didn't want to be that, you know, like, even when you're too young to verbalize the feelings, you know what it is. So, oh my God, you're so bipolar. You're such a narcissist, like, which keeps people who actually suffer from those from getting the help they need. Cause like, well, I don't know what I am, but I know that's bad. So be cognizant of that, especially around, you know, young children and teenagers, because they are really the ones I think right now that are going through a lot, you know, after everything. So don't minimize depression. Euphoria, I don't watch it religiously, but my kids do. And I do give them a lot of credit for honestly touching on topics that a lot of parents consider taboo. It's a little much for me. I get red in the face when I watch it, but like, I can't. But at least it is showing that, it's something that people suffer from. And I love the fact that like the main character, she has depression and substance abuse. And oh my God, what a shock that people that are sad are going to turn to drugs. Said no one ever, like that is how we self-medicate until we get the help that we actually need. So if you're not talking to your kids, someone else is talking to them. And if they're suffering from these issues, they're going to find help, whether it's the right or wrong kind. So, talk to your kids. If they're depressed or whatever, talk to them, break down those barriers, because you don't want them self-medicating like I did.
Right.
I mean, that's what I did for many, many years. I self-medicated.
Well, and that theory that you just referenced, is it the chicken or the egg? And first of all, it doesn't matter whether it was the chicken or the egg. I mean, it does matter. But what I mean by that is both need to be addressed, right? Like, did the trauma and mental health come first that caused the the unhealthy coping skills, or did the unhealthy coping skills get introduced at an age where it just triggered the biological predisposition that we have? I mean, I absolutely have in my bloodline. And it's different for all kinds of different people. But one thing that we know is that, let's just say that you can look back at your childhood and you don't have anything you can think of that was necessarily traumatic, or an underlying depression, anxiety, or a big red flag that you're able to diagnose. But you started for fun drinking at a young age, and that turned into addictive behavior. It doesn't matter who you are. The biology, the chemistry behind it says you will develop. It affects your brain. Yeah. You will develop a secondary struggle that, whether it's anxiety and or depression as a result from using drinking and drugs. And so I think that it's so important to have these conversations about, for those of us who are in recovery from addiction, what are you doing for your mental health? Because no matter what it was, the chicken or the egg,
yes,
if we're not addressing the mental health concerns, you're missing something.
I mean, personally, what do? I have a therapist that I talk to, which is very helpful. And I also give myself grace. I give myself grace if I don't meditate one day, because everyone tells me I need to. So I try. I suck at it. I suck at journaling. Like, I try, but I suck at it. And you know what? That's okay. I go to meetings that is I would say predominantly that's for recovery. But I don't know about you. I always leave feeling lighter. It's also for my mental health.
Yes.
Even if I wasn't in recovery or an addict, I always thought that everyone needs a place like AA, or a place like recovery. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that. A place like a recovery meeting. And then the other thing that I have learned that I have to do is take a day off. So I schedule it. I have someone I work with, and I'll say, okay, because I travel a lot, I work a lot, I have kids. This day, I'm taking this day off, and I won't do anything. I'll work out, I'll whatever, but like, I don't talk to people, and I just spend that day. If I drain myself, I notice a lot of my reactionary behaviors start to pop up. If I'm not sleeping, I'm traveling a lot, they start to pop up. I start to get this frazzledness. So for me, it's being very in tune with my body and my triggers. And also I work out, and I work out because I have to. For me, anxiety is huge. My anxiety is one of the biggest parts of who I am. I'm a very anxious person. And if I work out sometimes once or twice a day, if I'm really anxious, I'll work out twice a day. That to me is like a natural sedative, and it calms me down. So, I try to, and as boring as it sounds, I try to keep a schedule. I try not to stay up late. I try to wake up on time. I try not to over caffeinate. I try to eat healthy and not a lot of sugar, because these are all little things that I've noticed have helped. So, therapy. I don't at the present time, to each their own, but at the present time, like I don't need to be on any mood stabilizers or anything. I do believe in them for people that need them. But for me, therapy, exercise, healthy living, it's enough to keep it, manageable.
Absolutely. I love that you just dove right in there, because that was about to be my next question of, what do you, because I know that, you come from a very holistic approach, right? And I love that, because I do too. And but I also, there's, like you said, there's many pathways to wholeness that people use and whatnot. But I'm a big fan of addressing all of those those little parts to making up the whole health of our being.
Yes.
If you
And
can take,
not to overwhelm anyone if there's considering sobriety right now that you have to do all this on day one. Like day one, like the first year, just don't drink.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna, just don't drink. Like that's all you have to do for the first year. So I don't want to be like someone that's listening that's considering sobriety, like that's too much. No, I mean, I was eating potato chips if I wanted to. Like, just don't drink the first year. That's it.
But recovery is this almost like a snowball effect in the good way, that if you start off and create the little snowball, you pick up a little bit more each day, and you realize that there's more and there's better, and you want the more and better. And so you don't want the whole elephant at once, but like you pick up some more snow along. I love a good metaphor. And so I don't know why I thought about this one, but the longer you're rolling the snowball along, the bigger it's going to get, in a good way. Normally people use this analogy as a bad thing, but it's a good one in this one we're using, it's one of those things where, oh my gosh, before I got sober, if somebody had talked about all the stuff you and I are talking about right now, I would have rolled my eyes and been like, this is not for me. These people are crazy and on some kind of Kool-Aid, but the fact of the matter is, like, you realize what finding joy and balance in life is, that it's like a magnet that we're drawn to, and you want more and more of it. And,
well, that's kind of like the thing is, everyone that goes into recovery was obviously living a little bit of a hedonistic lifestyle,
Yes.
No one goes into AA because they were eating too much kale. Like, we all wanted more good. Like we all wanted to feel good. So we wouldn't stay if you weren't feeling good. Like that's the truth of the matter. Like, obviously we all were pleasure seekers. So I wouldn't be doing this if I was miserable. Either would you. Like I wouldn't stick around. It slowly starts to just be a little bit better. You're like, oh, I'm gonna try that. Okay, that worked. But I love when you're like the first time you go to a meeting, you're like, these people are crazy.
Right?
I think everyone goes there with like, oh my God, I have nothing in common with these people.
Well, it seems like everybody's got all these inside jokes and sayings and, the things that people find funny, and, they jointly laugh at it with each other. When somebody will say something, you feel like you've missed the point of the joke, because you're like, right, what, these people are all laughing at something that is just, it was barely funny or not funny, or why would you laugh at that? And, you stick around long enough, you start to get it, but
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It is though. Like I think we all go in there. We're just like, I'll never get it. And then you're like, oh, I get it. And it is funny because once you start to forgive yourself, you're like, okay, that I did some shitty things, but looking back, we all did shitty things. And it is there is a humor to it all because it got us to where we are now. So, it's like laugh or cry. I'm going to laugh every time if I have the choice.
Yes, I love that. Oh, I love that. That's a quote right there. Laugh or cry. I'm going to laugh every time if I have the choice. I love that. So, in talking about your story, I was just wondering if there's something that you would be willing to share with us about what you uncovered from the trauma mental health side. You talked about how you as you started to pursue more of that in therapy and look at the difficult childhood that you had, is there something that you are comfortable sharing with us that you were able to kind of map out, that you had to, line with a certain, behavior that you have been experiencing, that, that you had to deal with, that you hadn't uncovered the whole time?
I think for me, it was the sense of abandonment. My dad left when I was young. My mom went back to med school. So I was raised with different grandparents and aunts, and I never had that stable family. And
Mm,
so for me, a lot of that stuff came from, I was never the one that anyone loved the most.
mm,
I was never loved the most. And I looked for love in inappropriate places when I was younger.
mm.
It's one of the reasons that I have such a large family, because that true unconditional love I have with my children, I'd never experienced it before Bella was born. Um, but a lot of that uncomfortable, that need to be needed. I want to be the favorite. I want to be the best. I need that validation. I need that love. And when the hole is that big, no one person is going to fill it. That my children can't fill it, my ex-husband can't fill it, no one could fill that. I had to love myself first.
Mm.
And that is what I'm still working on. I'm not going to sit here and be like, and everything's fine, I am perfect. Oh no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. I am still very much a work in progress at the very beginning. I know that I'm at the very beginning stages. I'm 44. I got sober at 41, I think. 42. 42, let's just say that. I'm a little over 2 years sober now. So this is, we're going back,
Yeah.
and like, I'm writing a book right now. I'm working with a ghostwriter, and even
Awesome.
I didn't even realize how many things I've blocked out. I was like, oh, and that happened, and this happened, and this happened. And I have always led my life where once it's over, I put it in a box and I never look back. Nope, I'm not going to
Mm.
deal with that. Suck it up. And now realizing how detrimental to my mental health that has been.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going back through all these things. And so, for me, it is, I want to be loved the most. My self-esteem is so low. And slowly over the past year, I'm learning to love myself, and the real kind, not the kind that gets likes on Instagram.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. I think that you talked about something that is, we just passed Mother's Day, and when I think about the qualities of a mother, and how my mother was, and we all of us siblings have a joke that we talk about, because for years, we didn't know this, but our mom told us all that we were her favorite. And she treated us like we were her favorite. And we all kept it a secret. I mean, like, we didn't share it with the other siblings. And I don't remember at what point that the cat got out of the bag. And it was something that I really, in my scenario, I'm so grateful for, that my mom exuded this to me. You are my favorite, but I also have all my children are my favorites, but I have a place in your heart to be you're the most important to me. When I'm with you, you're the most important to me, and when I think about the love of a mother, I think that's what just overflows from what the feminine, the motherhood, kind of is. And we have the feminine and the masculine. We see this everywhere in society, and I know I'm going kind of on a rabbit trail here, but what you're talking about is this lovey, nurturing side that some of us either get from our moms or our primary caregiver, or we don't. And no matter what card we were dealt, at some point we have to determine, even if we weren't fully given that at a young age, what we do with it at the end of the day is our responsibility, and figuring out how to get on that self-loving journey and make ourselves the most important person to ourselves. If we weren't told that as a child growing up, we can always change that narrative as long as we're still breathing. And so that's what I got out of what you just said. And I know that was a lot, but
it is. It's a beautiful thing too, because I've been able to give to my kids what I didn't feel I got as a child. And that's been really, really beautiful. Is I've been able to not only try to work on myself and loving myself, but sobriety has made me such a more present parent. And I've been able to be so there for my kids right now.
That's beautiful. And it seems like, again, I have this picture from social media we talk about all the time, but they seem like they adore you, and it's just so awesome. And
they do. They actually, right now, they all like me, which is great. Not to say that has always been the case. Rowan and I went through a very tumultuous time. It was all in social media. We talked about it recently. We did an interview with Page Six. She put "F you, mom," and so we did go through some rough times, but when you're sober and you're present as the parent, you're able to still give your child all the love and the grace that they need. And then Rowan had to work out some stuff, and she's almost 20 now, so she's back. She's my best friend. But there was a time period where we weren't getting along, and that's okay. She was allowed to have her journey and her things, and obviously her mental health was a huge part of it. I was trying to help her. She didn't want help. It was tough, but I was sober, and I was able to be there when she needed me and take a step back when I needed to. And we have, obviously, a mother's love is unconditional. So when she was ready, I was there, and it's been amazing. So I say the last year with Rowan has been probably the closest we've ever been. And a lot of it is because I've been so open about addiction and mental health that she had a safe place to go. I mean, we're like this right now. And a lot of it is because we have a lot of the same issues, and I've been so open. So talk about it. Talk about mental health with your parents, with your grandparents, with your friends, with your children, with your coworkers, because telling that one person your story might make them more open to telling theirs. And you could really save a life. You really, truly could. I had a girlfriend who shared her mental health stories when I needed it. I knew who to ask for her, and she saved my life. And this is how we pass it on and pay it forward and protect each other. We share our stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, and hopefully then they'll do the same. And this is really how we all come together, and we all help each other, and we all break the stigma.
Yeah. So, and that's, again, that is the platform that we're talking about right now. What would you say, what would you recommend to everybody listening about in their own lives when we talk about having these conversations? What would you say as far as there's so many takeaways from our conversation today, even for me. I've gotten so much out of what you've shared, but what would you give as a takeaway and encouragement for people to start the conversation in a meaningful way to make this change, or to make a change in their life, in their environment, and their own behavior when it comes to mental health?
I think with everything, I always say, do what you can with what you have where you are. So if you're a parent, start talking to your kids honestly about yourself. If you're a child, start talking to your parents, start talking to your friends, your coworkers. We can't help each other if we start, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you? That's not how we actually have meaningful conversations. So when you ask someone, how are you? But no, really, how are you? How are you doing? How are you recovering from this pandemic? How's your mental health today? Are you okay? How are your kids doing? Ask the follow-up questions to be like, because my kids aren't doing right now, so-and-so has this or that. When you start to be, I have noticed this in my own life. When I am honest with people, it's like this relief falls down. And I have had the most meaningful, impactful conversations, even with people I might not ever see again. I can have a meaningful conversation with, someone in a grocery store line or at a restaurant that I've never met, we'll never see each other, just by saying, how are you really? Looking them in the eye. And I think that's the number one thing starting today, especially during Mental Health Awareness. Let your guard down. There is no shame in, in the thing that we say, it's okay not to be okay. There is no shame.
Yes.
Get rid of the shame around it. Just like we need to get rid of the shame around addiction, let's get rid of the shame by sharing our stories as honestly as possible.
Absolutely. That's so good. I love that. I love start with where you are and go from there. That's so true. So good. Well, lastly, I just wanted to ask you, what is your next? Because I feel like you're like you're moving and shaking and doing so many awesome, wonderful things. And I'm just curious, is there anything that you're currently doing exciting that you want to talk about, or that's coming up in your world, that you're stepping into, that you're able to share with us?
So I'm going to be in El Paso next week. There's for the El Paso Recovery Center. There's only one in El Paso, and the woman Jaswina, I met her at a Vanderpump Dogs gala. She got sober when she saw the show. There's only one recovery center there, and she's trying to break the stigma. So I'll be out there for El Paso Recovery.
Awesome.
I'm going to be doing OC Pride, which I'm very excited. They asked me to be a part of that, so I'm very excited.
Very cool.
OC Pride. I will be in New York for New York Pride also. I'm very excited about that. I have my book that I'm working on, which is incredibly exciting. I have another project that I'm working on in the TV world that I can't talk about yet. Fingers crossed. We're waiting right now. We did all the preliminary stuff for that. So now we're just waiting to see what happens. So hopefully that all goes well. But honestly, right now, mainly what I'm doing is where my passion is, LGBTQ and sobriety. I'm putting my heart into this. I'm doing a lot of public speaking, traveling around talking about this, because I've been gifted a beautiful platform. I was gifted this amazing opportunity to share my story with people, and it helps keep me sober too. I don't just give, I get so much back from people. So everything I'm doing right now is just from the heart, and I love it. So I'm between here in New York. I'm a full-time mom, and then I get to go to New York and be a full-time girlfriend in Braunwyn. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful world. And it's what they say is true. I'm living a life beyond my wildest expectations, one day at a time.
I love it. So beautiful. Well, your story is it's one that I think that so many people can identify with. And I mean, not necessarily being, on TV and reality, but I mean, a lot of the dynamics from the mental health and addiction side. And I love that Mental Health Awareness Month and Pride are, right up next to each other. Yeah, they're married. And so we get to talk about all kinds of things, especially on this specific episode. So, if you are listening and struggling with any of the things that we're talking about and need help, we will have resources in the show notes. And of course, you can access as well all things Braunwyn in our show notes, and follow along with her. And we just are so grateful that you've engaged with us today, and hope you stick around and stay tuned. So with that, I will close how I always do and say that it is never too late to start loving yourself, and you are only one decision away from a completely different life.
For more information on today's episode, check out the show notes. Recovery Stories is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health's rooted alumni community. If you or a loved one are struggling, have questions, or ready to take the next step, call our admission center at 888-648-4098. Or visit us online at www.promisesbehavioralhealth.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please share with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. We are grateful for you and hope that you have been encouraged by today's episode. As always, remember you are only one decision away from a completely different life, and it is never too late to start loving yourself.